All right, I have some breaking news stories that I'm going to be going through. Syria has fallen. Is this good or bad? Ukraine is getting ready to fire missiles deep into Russia under Biden's permission. To help me go through these big stories, I have retired Colonel Daniel Davis. Colonel Davis, thank you for joining me today.
Always my pleasure. Thanks for having me back.
So I don't want to catch you off guard. I'm going to hit you with a breaking news story. I know you've been doing interviews all morning, so I don't expect you to fully know what's going on. But right now, many representatives in Congress, including the governor of New Jersey, they are saying that it's believed that there is a mothership off the coast of Delaware, New Jersey, New York, from Iran, where upwards of 50 drones are coming in over the East Coast, some of them the size of cars. They believe that they are collecting data. What are your thoughts on this? I know I'm catching you off guard with this story.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been tracking this situation and wondering myself and trying to find out what all these drones are from, and the fact that we didn't know and we couldn't apparently take them down, et cetera. That by itself was alarming. But to hear that there may have been an Iranian group here, it is even more alarming, not just because of who it is, but the fact that these things were flying around many sensitive. And we're talking, if it's the same group anyway, these things have been going on for a couple of months at least in some very sensitive areas, not far away even from Washington, D.C., and some of the air bases around here. And if this is true, if Iran has been doing this, then that shows that we have a significant weakness. And this is actually the part that I knew even without knowing who was doing it. The fact that drones can fly up to any sensitive site and can continue to do so and can hover in a lot of places. And we were literally powerless to bring them down tells you that we have a real security issue in the United States that we need to resolve quickly. It should already have been resolved. We should have been watching what's going on in the Russia-Ukraine war and seeing the dramatic increase in drone and counter-drone technology. And we should have been like on, 24/7, 365 efforts to try and bring ourselves up to speed on what is now the nature and the state of war, to defend our critical infrastructure, to defend our domestic sites, et cetera, because drones can be so easily, transported and then launched from any number of places. Russia has seen this, where lots of drones can sometimes be even launched within Russian territory by special forces groups, et cetera, and then flown onto a target. And now Russia's been building up their capacity to shoot them down, to use electronic warfare means, et cetera, because they're in an active war zone, of course, with their neighboring Ukraine. But we haven't been on the ball at all in this kind of thing. I think thinking that the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans has kept us safe and that we don't have to worry about that kind of thing. Well, now we know that's not the case. Now, I will also talk about the issue with Iran itself. Listen, we can't be surprised by this at all. We do this stuff to everybody. We use our spy satellites and our drones, literally flying all over the Global Hawk, et cetera. We do it, of course, all over in China, et cetera. That's just how we do it. That's what we do to collect data and information. If now Iran is doing it, that is an indicator that they are feeling much more vulnerable because of everything that's been happening with Iran and Israel, with the dismantling of Hezbollah, almost the destruction of Hamas, et cetera, the weakening of the Houthis, all of these things that have been giving them security in the Middle East have just been shredded and dripped away. And, listen, the core issue that we have always claimed, Iran can't have the bomb. And we don't want them to have nuclear weapons, but we're giving them, Stephen, listen, I know this is not a popular view, but we are giving them every reason in the world to pursue a bomb, to try and get themselves that the only way that they can secure their national security is through nuclear weapons, because everybody else has fallen all around them. And that's not good for us to have a desperate Iran. And now that they may be setting up, especially if what Jack Keane has been advocating the last just 24, 48 hours, that hopes that the Trump administration uses this great opportunity to go after Iran. H.R. McMaster, I showed a clip of him on my show just an hour ago, that he is advocating that Trump, goes after Iran, et cetera. Look, you can't keep threatening them and thinking that they're not going to take any counteraction. They could be setting up a case here to where these could be armed drones that could take out lots of targets. And right now, like I said, we have terrible self-defense in this capacity. And if this is this mothership, I'm sure that we're going to take some action to make sure that that doesn't do us any harm. But that's one, and there's going to be a whole lot of others from elsewhere or from other sources that threaten us. And I think this is something we better pay a lot more attention to, like right now.
Yeah. No, I agree. My worry is you have Trump, who doesn't want to get entangled with Iran. He's willing to do sanctions. He's willing to threaten them, threaten some of their allies that are purchasing oil. But I don't believe he wants to go to war. But he's surrounded by people that want to. I mean, look at right. Lindsey Graham. Oh, yeah. He was saying, take out every oil field in Iran, bury right. these people for 100 years. The thing that's a little bit scary about this, like you said, they don't know whether these drones are armed. They now believe, like the Chinese spy balloon, that they were gathering data, some kind of intel. But now Representative Chris Smith is saying that he's hearing reports that they've been tracking Coast Guard ships and looking for patterns. So I don't know. They're off the coast. They're in the Atlantic Ocean, looking for patterns, looking for data. I don't know. There's not a lot of new information. But I didn't want to not hit that breaking news story.
No, it's a big issue. Yeah. Because I mean, it could be just reconnaissance. It could be, practicing to say, if we choose a kinetic option, where are the vulnerabilities? Because a lot of the things you would want is to see how far can we get these things before they're intercepted or before they're identified. How many of these things can we operate before they even know that they're being viewed, et cetera. And so when you find out where the limits are, that can tell you where the vulnerabilities are. So in the event that we do get into hostilities, we may find American soil being hit. We cannot overlook that possibility, and we have to recognize we're not as invulnerable as some people think. So before some of these people get too excited about going after Iran, thinking that they are powerless to do anything, they may not be.
Yeah. Well, and if they have a mothership, and there's been at least 50 of them spotted over the state of New Jersey, those drones, I mean, think about, you mentioned earlier, I mean, everyone's eyes have been open to drone warfare because of the Russia-Ukraine situation. And think how many drones you can build for the cost of one F-35 fighter jet. I mean, even Elon Musk said on Twitter, the future of war is drone warfare, yep. Mechanized warfare versus an F-35 that only works, 35% of the time or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Don't be surprised if Lockheed Martin doesn't start searching for that contract. Really quickly, this isn't a wartime topic, but wanted to get your thoughts on this. Democrat Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania says that Biden should pardon Donald Trump from his New York City case because District Attorney Alvin Bragg says when Trump comes out of office, he's going to continue to pursue him until he's jailed, gets a fine, something in 2029. Are we going to get past this, go after president stuff and actually try to make America better again?
No, we're not going to. I mean, everybody's doing it. You see Biden after, allegedly taking the high road with his son and, we're going to follow the rule of law. And okay, we're not. It's just talking points until it comes down to, what's important to them, and they'll do it. And of course that just gives the Trump administration all the more justification that says, oh, well, if you're doing it, then we're going to do it too. And, and listen, I know there's pros and cons to this, but, like the Biden administration, they came out and they said, we're going to follow the rule of law. And that's why we're going after Trump. And I'll just use one example with the documents, the classified documents issue or so, and the obvious grotesque double standard that, well, even though Biden did the exact same thing, we're not going to go after him. But it's not that we're weaponizing the Justice Department, et cetera. Obviously, that's just completely untrue, and anyone can look at it and see. But all that does is it continues to degrade everyone's trust in the government, everyone's trust in the legal system, in the judiciary. It's this is dangerous for America, and it's definitely going to continue because whoever's in power is going to want to exploit it to their advantage. And then, whoever gets in after that and whatever, they'll follow the same thing. And the problem is it's a race to the bottom and gone far enough. This can undermine people's trust and confidence in the government at all. And, listen, a lot of things become possible bad when you're talking about the loss of reputation of and the credibility of the government to do its job.
Yeah, that's a worry of mine that I have. Okay, back to military topics. If you could just give my audience a brief summary of what has happened in the last couple days in Syria. I know that it's fallen. Bashar al-Assad has escaped to Russia. However, the thing that is confusing is you have Trump on the one hand coming in saying, leave it alone. It's not our war. We don't need to put men, money on the ground. You have Biden saying, we're going to give military support and billions of dollars in financial aid. Why are these two seeing this differently? If you could, a summary, and then help me understand the best you can.
Yeah, this has been obviously a 13-year civil war. That was not just a civil war. There were all kinds of external players, not the least of which was the United States. All the way back during the Obama administration, we were heavily involved in it. There was still some even during the Trump administration, and definitely during this current administration. We've just had our fingers in all kinds of stuff. There has been some odd bedfellows with Israel and Turkey. Working from opposite ends of the country. You obviously had the Syria working with Russia and with China, and especially with some of this BRIC stuff in regards to Iran and how all that's worked out. And so you have all of these external players. Everybody's kind of trying to destabilize things from within to get their side into the ascendancy. But it turned out that the Assad regime was just ultimately really presumptuous and arrogant not to recognize the growing danger before all this happened. It started on the 27th of November. That's when it hit the American press, but it was certainly going on in the months prior to that. And lots of people in the intel community have told me that the signals were all over the place, that Russia was telling Assad that he needed to make some negotiated settlement with some of these groups while he had a chance, and he rejected that apparently, which was one of the reasons why Russia didn't do much in response to it other than fly him out, apparently. But the bottom line here is that, listen, whatever anybody wants to say publicly on CNN or elsewhere about the head of HTS, Jelani, he is at a core an Islamic radical, and he has been involved in lots of terrorist activities. That's why there's still to this day a $10 million bounty on his head from the United States. And, and if anybody in the administration wants to suddenly say, oh yeah, he's a good guy, he's going to bring good governance, I mean, that's just insane to say that. So the truth of the matter is that Syria is now, in effect, not just a failed state, but I think it's irreparably destroyed as a coherent state. I don't think you'll ever see the borders of Syria that used to be prior to 2011, the consistent state of Syria. I think that's gone forever because the Turks, no, they're not going to give up anything. The Israelis have continued to move beyond the Golan Heights in the direction of Syria. Tanks had been seen 15 miles away from the outskirts of Damascus, and it's uncertain yet how far Netanyahu is going to take his forces there. And then, of course, you have the Syrian Democratic Forces, where the U.S. military still is to this day, and all of the stuff in between. And now, what's going to happen even within the chunk that's under the HTS control in the western part of Syria? How long is that going to stay together? Because it was a coalition of a lot of different violent groups. There's the Syrian National Army, which is Turkish-backed, basically. And are they going to cooperate here? So you see, there's every possibility for this to become balkanized, something like the Yugoslavia after it fell apart and turned into all these different little nation states. I think you're probably going to end up seeing something like that, and I fear greatly for the people of Syria, the innocent people who were always the bill payers for this. I think you're going to see a bloodbath of retribution and an explosion of violence in the coming days. I just can't see how it's going to stay together.
Okay. Now, whenever something falls like this, of course, there's a power vacuum that sucks in. Are we going to see a good group come in and Syria put back together to its glory days? Or do we see a jihadist, a radical, and ISIS-like situation? Where do you see it going?
It is an ISIS-like entity that's in charge right now. Whatever that interview on CNN with Jelani, to the contrary, whatever he wants to project, the fact is, on the ground, they are an Islamic State type entity with the same ideology that they've had before. And this, these reports that that the HTS was fighting against ISIS and they were fighting against some of the Al-Qaeda groups. It's unclear what they were fighting over. Was it about ideology, like let's don't be radical, let's be good and domestic, or was it like, no, I want to be radical this way and I want to be radical that way, so we're fighting together? Because the bottom line is it's still a radical group, and one radical group or another is going to emerge there. So I don't see Turkey giving up anything they have. I don't see the Kurds willingly giving up anything they have without a big fight for it. And then there's the Syrian National Army, etc. So the answer is no. I don't see any prospect that a quote good side is going to come in. I think that when things get to the condition that they are now, especially when you have so much external money from so many different competing and contradictory foreign assets, that all you're going to have is more and more violence until someday, probably in the distant future, the thing burns itself out and then something will just take over afterwards. But as I say, I think that it will never get back to the old borders of Syria. I think that you're going to get a balkanization of some sort.
Okay. I mean, I can't help but think of the game King of the Hill, right? Like,
yeah,
you're only the king of the hill as long as you can maintain power, but there's always somebody looking to knock you off. So we have an ISIS-like person now in Jelani, but can they hold that? Will something else come in? We'll see. This region of the world, I mean, they've just been at war for it seems like most of my life. And then you bring in the religious wars and all of that. The Middle East is a hard situation. Let's jump over to the Russia-Ukraine situation. In Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky continues to seek money and weapons rather than peace. I believe Biden and Kamala Harris would have funded Zelensky in Ukraine until the last Ukrainian died. Trump, however, wants that over quickly. Will Zelensky attempt to escalate the war under Trump, or do you think this thing is going to fizzle out as Trump dries up money and support and puts pressure on other NATO nations to end this?
Well, look, we got to get to the Trump administration first. And Zelensky went on his daily broadcast yesterday and said that he was looking for 20 more air defense systems, Patriots, et cetera, which don't exist. No one's going to ever give him that many. But he's asking for them because he said he also wants more long-range weapons to force Russia into peace talks. That's what he said yesterday. Then apparently hours later, they actually launched some more ATACMS weapons, even after Russia had warned after the firing of the Oreshnik missile, don't go down this path because we will respond. Now they have responded. And that's coming just after days ago when Trump went on that, I think it was an NBC News interview where he said funding is going to start drying up. Yes, it is going to start drying up. I want an immediate ceasefire. So he has signaled point blank to Macron, to Zelensky himself, we're wrapping this down. There's not going to be any continuation of support of the war. And then Zelensky, after meeting with Trump, then launches this new missile into it. But of course, it was done with the participation of the U.S., the Biden administration. They can't do it by themselves. So then you have to rationally ask, towards what end? What are you trying to accomplish? Because Russia has now said they will respond to this. This is just hours ago from when we're making this show right here. And the question is going to be, what is he going to do then? Because if Russia hits something meaningful, or if they do what some in the Russian side have been saying in their media that is under consideration in the Kremlin, is to launch at NATO targets outside of Ukraine, where some of these long-range missiles have come from, or where some of the satellites that are used to direct them onto Russia. Those are all potential targets. And it could be that Russia then says, all right, I'm tired of dealing with you guys. I'm talking. Apparently, Trump admitted he has talked already to Putin, that they're working towards a negotiated settlement. And if Putin concludes that, well, it doesn't matter, Trump or anybody else, you guys are still going to escalate this. I'm now going to take action here. I'm not going to sit there while my air bases deep in my country are hit. And so he hit some of our air bases deep in some of the NATO territory. And then you have the possibility of Article 5 explosion and all that. So we're in a very dangerous point as we're making this video right here about what could come next because of the actions that Zelensky and the Biden administration have taken. And now we have to rely on Putin not to take the action that we would take if it was the reverse, and hope that we can get to January 20th when Trump can then he'll actually have the levers of power and can start taking actions. That is my concern right now.
Yeah, I share the same concern. It's like, I mean, just look at Trump has a totally different focus in Israel. Trump has a different focus with Iran, with Syria, with Russia, and yet Biden continues to push the envelope. I read that on December 10th, so not long ago, that President Biden authorized Zelensky and Ukraine again to hit deep into Russia. Russia is vowing to retaliate hard against Ukraine. Is there any military advantage for the United States or Ukraine to continue to fire deep into Russia?
No, and I've actually tweeted out something on that earlier today. That is one thing I'm emphasizing so clearly. There is zero, even theoretical, a possibility for these long-range weapons to affect anything positive on the ground militarily for the Ukraine side. It will not give the Zelensky and Trump better negotiating terms, as some have claimed. No, none of that. All it can do is just like poke a beehive. It can like walk into a cave where a bear is and shove him in the chest and think, well, that's going to harm him. He'll back down. Of course not. He's just going to bring that claw paw up and just rip your face off. That's what can happen here. And I mean, if you need any proof, if anybody has any doubts, the Wall Street Journal a few days ago, earlier this week, came out and had a graph that showed that in the last 3 months alone, the Russian side has launched a total of 6,000 long-range missiles, drones, or FAB strikes from their aircraft throughout the whole country of Ukraine. 6,000, 3 times more than the previous 3 months here. And you see that on the ground, every one of them hurt, but it has not caused the collapse of the Ukraine army, even with all the stuff on the Eastern Front and in the Kursk area, etc. So then by what rationale can anyone on our side claim that a handful, 6 in this case, is going to have any effect on the ground on the war here? I mean, it's irrational and it's grotesquely untrue. So then that's why you have to get to the motivation. Why would the Biden administration allow something that cannot have any positive outcome, but can escalate the war? Why would they allow that? And that's what I'd like an answer to.
Yeah, it just, to me, it seems like there's just no military advantage. It's just provoke. I mean, that's a great example. Walk into a cave, shove a bear in the chest, and then go, oh, that'll back him off, right? Like, no, they're just going, and they've told them, we are going to respond. We're going to hit you hard. We are going to use mirroring. You hit our base, we'll hit your base. You hit our city, we'll hit your city. There's just no military advantage. I don't know why. I don't understand why Biden would want to end his final 45 days or so in office provoking World War III. It does not make sense to me.
The only thing I can just hazard a guess is that he thinks that, supporting Ukraine for as long as it takes, which Harris would have done had she won, is the right answer. So he says Trump is obviously not going to do it. So I want to gum up the works so that he doesn't have a chance by having Russia take some kind of provocative action in retaliation. Then that we'll be able to use it and say, aha, I told you, see how bad that bear is? Now we have to go more. Or because then Trump would be in a position of saying, okay, let's say that Russia does do something outside of the borders in retaliation this time. And now then can Trump come in and say, okay, I'm still going to negotiate an end to settlement? Everyone will be pointing fingers at him saying, you're surrendering to Putin. You're just giving in to him, etc. Then leaving him the only course to accelerate. And then that's when we get into the possibility of a direct confrontation with Russia, which could go all too easily into nuclear escalation. And that is catastrophically not in America's interest. But I think that the Biden administration is trying to tie Trump into a situation where he'll have no choice. But he will have a choice, but it will be incredibly more difficult because this militant elite in our country is doing everything in their power to push us into war. It's irrational, it's self-destructive, but it's a malaise and a sickness that inflicts our country that is all too real.
Yeah. Last year, Tulsi Gabbard spoke at Rage Against the War Machine, and she talked about how you can plan as much as you want, Biden, but 1,000 things could go wrong to escalate a war. very, very quickly. Missile goes in the wrong direction, kills the wrong person, whatever. It could escalate so quickly. Why do you think Democrats, the Pentagon, the mainstream media, why are they putting up such a wall against Tulsi Gabbard becoming director of national intelligence?
Yeah, I actually tweeted about that this morning too, because there's a new Wall Street Journal editorial board op-ed out today to where they are blasting Tulsi Gabbard again. And I took exception with that because they do what so many of these people do. They twist and distort what actually happened. They expose their lust for war by what they claim should have been done at certain different spots. And when Tulsi Gabbard takes actions or advocates policies in the past against certain actions, they say that's an evidence of her weakness. You know, that she says she doesn't want war, that's fine. But when other people are doing things that you don't like, you have to do more. Well, what they conveniently omit and don't talk about in that op-ed or any of the like is that many of the actions we have taken have spawned these kinds of reactions against us. Like this one here with Iran, for example. If we keep shoving them and putting them into more and more of a box and threatening them and firing missiles into them, they're going to react. Everybody is going to react when they get hit in the face or when they catch a missile in the teeth, etc. But what we do is when they respond, we go, oh, I told you, see, they're bad. And anybody who said we shouldn't have gone to war with them, they don't know what they're talking about. So they want H.R. McMaster, who this past Sunday went on an interview on television and said that this is a great opportunity, his words, for Trump to go into and now take care of Iran. You've had Jack Keane, who's repeatedly gone on Fox News here recently and talking about, yes, we should go into and take out Iran. You just mentioned Lindsey Graham, et cetera. And there's plenty on the Democrat side who are saying the same thing. There's just this lust for war. So anyone like a Tulsi Gabbard who says, let's be sober and rational about this and do the pros and cons, look at the resources that are available and the end outcomes that we want. And if we can't benefit from a certain course of action, let's don't go down that path. Let's seek another. Let's use diplomacy if we can to attain a more beneficial outcome to the U.S. at a lower cost. See, these people are oblivious. Nowhere in the Wall Street Journal did they admit that these kinds of policies led to disaster in Iraq, led to disaster in Libya, led to disaster in Afghanistan, an absolute military defeat. And then they can never see the wreckage of these kinds of policies in effect on the ground. And so they just continue to say, we just should have done more of it. We should have killed more people. We should have launched more bombs, etc. And yet they are bringing us closer to the brink of a war we should never fight. And that includes both in Iran and against Russia, because they just have this lust for war. They can't see anything else. So they want to destroy anyone who doesn't share that view, which is Tulsi Gabbard right now.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like the mainstream media loves the idea of war. They get to talk about it a lot. They bring out the generals and all of that. I mean, Tucker Carlson openly talked about being so pro Desert Storm and the war in Iraq and Middle East. And now that he's older and away from it, he's like, man, I'm really ashamed of promoting that. But it seems like the mainstream media, you know, they just want clicks and views and all of that. Instead of just letting the news happen, they go create the news. That's a worry that I have. And I feel like that's what they're doing right now is they don't want Tulsi Gabbard and some of Trump's other picks because they're outsiders that may actually go in the opposite direction of what they're used to. You know, like CNN became extremely famous for covering the Middle East war. That was their rise to fame. Now they can't even get 40,000 of their top demographic to watch their show. I'll be covering that later tonight. MSNBC can barely get 29,000.
That's crazy.
I mean, you and I are getting numbers like
I know
that.
we really are.
And these massive international countrywide networks are just falling apart because they can't keep up with the way that people prefer to consume the news.
And it's not. It's in addition to that. That's certainly a major portion of it. But also, people are like, "Come on, man! This stuff is crazy." We can see through what you're saying. We can see through what these guests you have on that are completely disconnected with ground truth reality, and they're just getting sick of it. When they can come on shows like yours and see, okay, what you're saying actually lines up with what I see. That makes sense to me, and I think that's why people are flocking more and more to your channel.
Yeah, well, and to yours. So. With that, let me finish up here and give you a plug. I appreciate you coming on, Colonel. If you want to continue to get military insight, Colonel Daniel Davis has the deep dive here on YouTube, and you can go follow. I'm going to put a direct link down below. I know you're busy. You're in high demand. Last time we were on, you were getting international phone calls to talk about Iran, so I won't take up any more of your time. But I'm going to put the deep dive link down below. Colonel Davis, I appreciate you coming on. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Hey, listen, I appreciate you too. I mean, you've given me some great advice, even off camera, about how to build up our show, and you promote it in places like this. We're really grateful. We've been seeing some great growth, and I attribute a good portion of that to you. So thank you.
I appreciate that. Okay. Have a great rest of your day.
See you next time.